Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and today we're going to be talking about more Sly Cooper content. Hope you guys are ready. For this video, we're going to be discussing some of Sly's hardest missions ever, my least favorite missions, and the missions that give me headaches and problems no matter how many times I play them or how many times I go back and just either watch other people play it or just play it myself and realize, man, these missions are so darn difficult to get through sometimes. So, since I'm making two different videos on this topic about Sly Cooper missions, I'm basically gonna have to have a set of rules to go by for this. So, here's the set of rules that I have going. Rule number one, it cannot be an operation, for I'm gonna make a different video on that one day, because let's be honest, the operations would probably rule the top 10 in my list. And number two, the missions can have boss fights in them. They can have boss fights in them. And I think that's about it. Those are the only rules that I have for this list. Aside from that, let's get into it. Number 10. Treasure in the Depths from Sly 1. In my opinion, Sly 1 is definitely the hardest game in the series, without a doubt. Mainly because, it was the first game in the series and they were just trying to figure out what worked and what didn't, so I can understand why the game was very hard for people to get by. But I will say, this mission here, in particular to me, is definitely one of the harder missions in Sly 1, mainly because you have to collect treasure chests in the ocean, in the bottom of the ocean from these crabs that are trying to steal it. That's the only way you're going to be able to get the treasure key. And unfortunately, if even one crab gets away with a treasure chest, you automatically fail the mission. So you have to get all 40 treasure chests while also trying to prevent the crabs from taking them and putting them back into their holes before it's too late. I remember I failed many times on this one mission alone, and it was just so frustrating and aggravating to get through for me that I literally had to pause the game for a bit and just rethink my whole strategy afterwards. Now I will say, even though this mission's hard, it's not really that, impossible to beat. It can be beaten within, the first 2 or 3 attempts. But, I know for me, when I was younger, I just struggled greatly with this mission. Basically, any shooting mission from Sly 1 I had trouble with a lot. And in all honesty, I'd say that's probably the case for most Sly games. The shooting aspect of the game is not the greatest sometimes. But for this one in particular, this one just gave me such a rough time to deal with. I didn't care for it then. I still don't care for it now. And that's why it's number 10 on this list for me. But it's not the worst mission by far. There are definitely other ones on this list that drive me more insane. But this one made the top 10 solely because it did give me a bunch of headaches when I was younger. Number 9. Close to Contessa from Sly 2. This mission is legitimately frightening for me, especially when I was growing up. If you watch my previous Sly Cooper video, you can understand that I had a giant fear of spiders growing up, which is the reason why I didn't play Sly 2 for the longest time afterwards. And in this mission, you have to pickpocket the Contessa of her keys in order to get the codes to unlock Murray's jail cell. But there are guards right behind her to protect her at all costs, so you have to distract each and every one of them and take them out one by one in order to reach the Contessa and her keys. I'll give credit where credit's due. The music and the atmosphere of Prague while playing this mission will have you on edge every single time. Trying to pickpocket the Contessa while her guards are patrolling behind her is hard enough, but the fact that the guards will chase after you if you get caught by one of them until you're spotted by Contessa herself made me pee my pants almost every time I played this mission and made me want to restart the console actually. It's funny though because when I got the first key, I was ecstatic as all heck. Until I soon realized that there were 2 more keys afterwards that I had to collect. This mission took me hours to complete the first time I tried it. My scared 15-year-old self didn't want to have to deal with spiders at the time. And now that I'm older, I'm less fearful of spiders, so this mission isn't that hard anymore. It's almost like Five Nights at Freddy's where, even though you're jump scared the first few times, afterwards you're just basically immune to it. Even though I still get occasionally scared every now and then. But I just can't with this mission sometimes, and that's why it's number 9 on my list. And if you're like me and you have a fear of spiders, this mission is definitely very difficult for you to get through. Number 8. Starving Hippos from Sly 4. This mission overall is just boring for me. It's really just a mission that's just there just to be there. Basically, in this mission, you play as Murray and you have to chase down the penguins that swallowed all of Bentley's parts to the time machine, because Bentley needs those parts in order to get the time machine working again so they can get out of freezing cold Jurassic thievery, basically. Yeah, this mission, there's nothing really that great about this mission, or that, like, anything. It's a mission that at times is more difficult than it needs to be, because these penguins run really fast, and sometimes you have to defeat a couple of guards that are in the area too, so it feels like you're doing more work than what you should be doing just to complete the mission. On top of that, you have Murray feeling down and depressed from a previous mission that he couldn't climb the wall, which to me is basically huge character derailment for Murray, considering what Murray's been through in the past, like having to deal with Bentley's crippled legs, that ain't being all his fault, and also on top of that, literally having to go through a drug-induced addiction because of the Contessa. It really just feels like they were reaching for something to make Sly 4 very interesting, but that's about as far as I can say with this mission. This mission is unnecessary. It's very difficult sometimes if the penguins move too quickly, and I just don't see any point in this mission whatsoever, other than it just needed to progress the story somehow. Number 7. Tank Showdown from Sly 2. Now, this mission is just very unnecessarily hard. Like, listen to the controls that Bentley puts out to us.
Murray, use both analog sticks to drive the tank. Press both up to move forward, both down to go in reverse, and in opposite directions to rotate. To fire your turret, tap the R1 button. You'll need to take out 6 tanks to get the job done.
The controls are just like, I just don't understand why they made the controls that unnecessarily difficult to deal with. Like, you can only use the analog sticks to move and shoot? Like, what type of nonsense is that? It's just like, I don't know what they were trying to do with this mission in terms of what they were, trying to find as like a nice little gameplay section that they could do. But it just feels tacked on, and I feel like they were trying to reach for straws with this one. And I'm just glad that we didn't have to deal with this mission too much. We only dealt with it in this mission and then in the Operation High Road. After that, we don't ever have to worry about this mission again. But yeah, that's basically how I feel about this whole mission in general. It's just, the controls are what really killed this mission for me. I don't mind like trying to take down the guards by shooting at them, but it's really just the way this tank operates with the analog sticks, and I don't look forward to it anytime I play this mission. And from what I've seen on the other top 10 hard or least favorite Sly Cooper missions list, many people don't like it either. Number 6. Dimitri's Deep Dive / Deep Current from Sly 3. I'm kind of cheating on this entry because I'm putting 2 missions in the same slot, but they're both basically the same mission. So basically, as much as I love Dimitri, his missions in Sly 3 were absolutely just unnecessary. Like, you could literally cut them out and the story could probably still progress either way. But here's basically what Dimitri's missions are like. Basically, in the chapter Dead Man Tell No Tale, you have to help Dimitri find his scuba diving gear. We managed to do that in the first half of the story, and then in the second half, Penelope gets captured and we have to rescue her. Now, one of the missions for that is Dimitri's Deep Dive, where Dimitri has to go into the water and basically retrieve a lot of shark heads from the ocean so that the cannons can be accurately shot out of the cannon when they go for that battle against the Fui. I tell you, this mission, it's just like, First off, the controls are just unbearable sometimes. Just much like the tank mission, the controls are what killed this mission for me, and the other mission as well. So like in the deep dive mission, you have to do a few things in order to get yourself ready for the final battle with Lafui. Basically, in this mission, you have to shoot up a bunch of hammerhead sharks in order to collect their bones and use it for, like, you know, ammo powder whenever you go up against Lafui. And on top of that, you have to get shark heads in order for the cannons to shoot more accurately. And it's a lot of work doing these missions. A lot of work that just feels like it doesn't really need any involvement whatsoever. Then in the Deep Current mission, which is in the final world of Sly 3, you have to get Sly's cane from out of the ocean, otherwise it'll be lost forever. And trying to escape the traps in this Deep Current section is just unbelievably difficult. Like, I have literally died a few times trying to get past this mission, and it's insane how fast they expect you to react. Like, your timing has to be pinpoint perfect, otherwise you're gonna get hit and lose health and then die eventually. And if you do make it to the end, we have to deal with Dr. M. Now, that boss fight with Dr. M in that second part of the mission, I'll say it's not the hardest thing in the world, but it does come off as unnecessary, and it's unsatisfactory anyway, because Dr. M just ends up taking the cane at the end of the mission anyway, which is one of the reasons why I don't like this mission. It just feels tacked on and unnecessary for everything that this game tried to offer. As much as I love Sly 3, I just think missed the mark on a few aspects of the game, and that's the way I'm leaving it as. And that especially is apparent in Dimitri's missions of the game. Number 5. Down Home Cooking from Sly 1. In this mission, you basically get contacted by a ghost who says he'll give you a treasure key, but you have to help him collect chickens for the gumbo that he's making for the ghosts in the area, in Miss Ruby's area tonight. The only problem is, the ghost is scared of these red chickens that carry bombs around them that'll explode on contact, so he wants you to collect the chickens, the white chickens anyway, and collect as many as you can so that he can make the gumbo for tonight. This mission can be a real pain in the neck, because, like, trying to catch the chickens, the white ones anyway, is difficult enough. But then you got these two red ones who are basically locked in on trying to capture you and blow you up in the process. And this mission just becomes unbearable sometimes. I remember I died a few times and I got in a couple of game overs in that section alone because of this mission. The fast-paced nature of this mission can really get on your nerves, and if you're not, like, mentally stable enough, you will throw your controller at the screen a few times. But I will say, this mission is very creative, and at least you don't have to shoot anything or use bad controls. It's just the fast-paced nature of this mission really can drive you up a wall. Number 4. At the Dog Track / Desperate Race from Sly 1. Oh man, this mission was my hardest mission for the longest time. And again, I know I'm cheating because I'm putting 2 missions in the same slot, but they're basically the same mission, just in different areas. So let's talk about these missions. They're basically racing mini games that you have to play in order to get a treasure key. And you play as Murray for both of them, since Murray is the owner of the van. So at the dog track, Murray tries to get a hot dog, and he got a bunch of gangster dogs challenging him to a race. And so if he wins the race, he gets a treasure key. Now you have to race around the track 3 times, and you get a key if you win. Now I'm gonna give you about 3 seconds to figure out exactly what the problem with this mission is. The bad controls. Once again, you have to use the analog sticks to drive. The only difference is that you have to use a nitros boost in order to gain leverage in the race, and you press the square button for that. But the problem with that is that if you're angled a specific way and you use the nitros boost at the wrong time, you're gonna end up either flying in the air or going so fast that you lose control of the van altogether. And then you'll have to restart the race over and over again until you can get the angles and directions correct. I tell you, the one in Mesa City, even though the one in Panda King's world is just as bad, the one in Mesa City drove me up a wall for the longest time. Like, I almost flung my controller at the wall with this darn mission. Like, it was not funny. Just thinking about it, just thinking about it gets on my nerves right now. But yeah, so the racing missions in Sly 1 were they were not necessary. They were not necessary at all. And what makes this even worse is that in the final world of Sly 1, you can actually control the van perfectly fine. You can actually move around and everything. But in the first two worlds where you have to use the van, it doesn't work whatsoever. And this is one of the reasons why I never cared for any of the racing missions in Sly like that. And this mission and the other one in Panda King's world is exactly the reason why I don't like them. Number 3. A Deadly Dance from Sly 1. This is basically Miss Ruby's boss fight, but they add a bit of a twist to it. You see, in order to catch Miss Ruby, you have to play basically a voodoo game of Simon Says, and you have to follow everything she says correctly, otherwise you're gonna get knocked off the platform and you're gonna die. This mission is hard for a number of reasons. You have to time everything just perfectly, and if you time it incorrectly, you're gonna die, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So normally I try to have at least 2 lucky charms with me when I go and do this mission, but even that doesn't help sometimes. I guess the difficulty in this mission comes from the fact that if you mistime anything, like you have to be like a musician or someone with rhythm in order to get the mojo and flow down. Just like bam, 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 like you can't miss a beat at all. And what sucks even more about this is if you have the HD collection of Sly, everything in that is basically out of sync. So the music in that area is out of sync. It doesn't line up correctly the way it's supposed to, like it did in the original version on the PS2. So imagine trying to do that mission with everything all out of whack and out of sync. You get what I'm saying, right? Like, that mission is just unbearable to deal with because everything is out of sync and you have to basically like make your own beat to it in order to be in sync with it. Now, I read and watched somewhere that some people actually like to mute the TV as they do that part of the mission, just so they don't have to deal with the annoyance of the HD's collections out of sync area. But it still doesn't help, you know, because you still have to time everything correctly, and if you mess it up, you're gonna fail. And again, I've gotten a few game overs in that one area alone, and it is frustrating to deal with. Number 2. Charged TNT Run from Sly 2. This mission was the vein of my existence for the longest time. All the missions on Arpeggio's blimp were so headache-inducing, but if I had to pick the one that gave me the hardest time, Charged TNT Run definitely takes the cake. So in this mission, you have to blow up one of the engines on Arpeggio's blimp because it's locked from the inside. And since Bentley's bombs aren't strong enough to do the job, you have to use a TNT barrel to do it. But here's the catch. The TNT barrel's explosions by itself won't be enough either, so you have to collect 3 charged fuses around the blimp and drop the barrel on top of the engine to blow it up. This mission is difficult for a few reasons. 1, you're not allowed to jump out of the barrel until you're on top of the engine, otherwise the mission will fail, because there's only 3 charges on the blimp and you need all 3 of them in order for the explosion to work. Number 2. This map is so unorganized that it's almost impossible to figure out where you're going half the time. And just when you think you finally figured out where you're going, you either fall off the map accidentally or drop somewhere where you can't reach where you're supposed to get to. Or, number 3, the guards in the area spot you and kill you on the spot. And that's what gets me about these guards, is that sometimes they will turn around and spot you when you least expect them to. I've died so many times because a guard changed his path so suddenly before I had time to react. By the time I beat this mission, I was beyond fed up with it. but that just made defeating Clockler and Sly 2 all the more satisfying. But I still dread this mission anytime I play a replay of it. And it was so close to getting my number 1 spot on this list, but there was another mission, or in this case, missions, that gave me much more headache-inducing problems than this one did. And we're gonna get to that, but first, let's do a recap of everything, and I'll even talk about some honorable mentions that I have. Number 10, Treasure in the Depths. Number 9, Close to Contessa. Number 8, Starvin' Hippos. Number 7, Tank Showdown. Number 6, Dimitri's Deep Dive / Deep Current. Number 5, Down Home Cooking. Number 4, At the Dog Track / Desperate Race. Number 3, A Deadly Dance. And number 2, Charge TNT Run. And let's go over some of the honorable mentions that could have made the list, but didn't because I either didn't hate them enough or they just didn't find any interest in me whatsoever, but they weren't as bad as some of the ones in the top 10. Dynamic Duo from Sly 3. This mission isn't hard, it's just very tedious more than anything. You basically have to help Penelope throughout this whole entire mission. And controlling the RC car isn't fun. Trying to lead Penelope back home where she's blind isn't fun either. It just, again, like I said, this mission gets very tedious at times. Big Truck from Sly 3. This mission to me feels very tacked on, and the difficulty of it is unnecessary. Like, you have to capture red soldier scorpions in order to clear out the miners from Aya's Rock. But what makes this mission very difficult sometimes is the fact that you have to cool your tires off, and if you don't cool them off in time, they'll explode on you and you'll fail the mission. The only way to do that is to either use the water that's in Aya's Rock, which eventually dries out after the first half of the section, and you can either run them over by using the blue worker scorpions. And trying to find blue worker scorpions in this area is very difficult, because if you run over the red ones, you have to wait for more red ones to come out, and the blue ones aren't necessary to the plot whatsoever, so you have to capture the red ones in order to further the plot. The blue ones will just distract you and keep you away from trying to finish the goal. Battle on the High Seas from Sly 3. I hate all the ship segments in Sly 3, but at least they get you a lot of money in there, which is what prevents it from making the top 10 worst list in my opinion. Piranha Lake from Sly 1. This mission is very similar to the crab mission. The only biggest difference is you have to capture oily fish and light 25 candles in order to get the key. And it's not that difficult, you just have to be wary and be fast with it. But much like the missions where you have a time going against you, it can get very tedious sometimes. But I wouldn't say it's the worst mission in the world. Down the Line from Sly 3. Again, any mission involving Penelope's RC car I automatically don't like or care for just because of how difficult it is to control that thing sometimes. There was only one instance of me actually liking the RC car mission, but I'll talk about that in a different video. But aside from that, Down the Line, it gets very nerve-wracking because you have to beat a fuse to Murray before it blows up Murray. Waterbug Run from Sly 2. This mission seems difficult before you realize that you don't really need the pools in order to keep the bug alive. You just have to run really fast and make sure the guards in the area don't see you or try to capture you. If you can just sneak around them, this mission is perfectly easy and you can get there without using the pools at all, which I've done a few times. Cooper Hangar Defense from Sly 3. What really makes this mission very difficult is that they're throwing a lot, and I mean a lot of enemies at you in the first section and third part of this mission. But if you could just maintain what you're doing and make sure you're staying ahead of everything, this mission isn't too bad. And lastly, RC Combat Club from Sly 2. Much like Penelope's RC missions, this is one of the first times where trying to control an RC car was difficult, but at least you only use it once, so that's why I'm not too bothered by this mission. And now we reach the number 1 spot. Now, what's in the number 1 spot isn't really one mission, but rather a combination of missions, but it's not about what's wrong with the missions themselves, it's rather what I've been complaining about the whole time on this list. And that's the bad controls. And these missions really drive me up a wall anytime I have to deal with them. But ladies and gentlemen, the number 1 spot for my most hated and hardest Sly Cooper mission is any mission involving the 6-axis controllers from Sly 4. Seriously, screw everything that involves that convoluted 6-axis controller. The first taste we get of the 6-axis controller is with some of Bentley's hacking missions. Gosh, they're so freaking difficult to get through. It's like the thing isn't even synced up to the PS3 half the time. So trying to maneuver that ball of energy through the entire hacking mission, it's so hard, and I can't get it for the life of me. And it takes me about 15 or 20 different tries just to get the mission done. It frustrates me so much. Then we get another taste of it if you try to unlock any of the safes in Sly 4. A couple of safes will require you to use the 6-axis controller, and of course there's a time limit on those safes too. So you have to move quickly and hope that your 6-axis controller can actually link up to the PS3 good enough so that you can unlock the safe. But that's not the worst instance of the 6-axis controller, in my opinion. The worst instance of it comes during the mission training montage during Bob Cooper's world. I couldn't, for the life of me, beat that mission. Whenever that training montage came on, I knew I was going to be stuck in there for a good while. It took me hours. Not hours, days. It took me days to complete that darn training montage mission because of the darn 6-axis section. That 6-axis section where you have to maneuver the egg on the log and make sure it doesn't fall off is so hard to deal with half the time, and I almost flung my controller a few times because I couldn't get the mission. I couldn't get past it for the longest time. The first section of it is okay because they're at least training you on how to move with it, but it's the section where they're all very serious and how the Rocky theme music speeds up and everything's getting all very serious. That part of the section where the egg moves so fast that you barely have time to react to it, and it's not even the fault of the player. It's the darn controller. This darn 6-axis controller will literally get on your nerves to the point where you will destroy the controller and you'll have to buy a new one, and then you'll destroy that one in the process because this mission is what's driving you up the wall. And this mission drives me insane, and anytime I play Sly 4, I do my best to avoid this mission at all costs unless I'm doing an action replay of it. And that is why anything involving the 6-axis controller is automatically my least favorite mission in any Sly game. And I hope they never bring that 6-axis controller crap back again. Okay guys, so that was my top 10 most hated / worst Sly Cooper missions of all time. What do you guys think of this list? Did you agree with me? Did you not agree with me? Comment down below. Let me know some of your opinions and thoughts of it. And I will see you guys in the next video, which will be the top 10 best Sly Cooper missions, or my top 10 favorite Sly Cooper missions. So until then, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.